together and stand strong. Thanks so much. Happy to take your questions. So I believe there's a mic at the top over here, so happy to take questions. If it doesn't look like there are going to be a lot of people who disagree, but if you do disagree, I have a standing rule. Oh, good. Okay, good. If I have a standing rule at any speech that I give, which is that if you disagree, you get to go first.
Hi, Ben.
Hey, how's it going?
Huge fan. I actually agree.
So far, the disagreement is going well.
Sorry about that. But this is actually a question in response to comments that you've made in the past. Specifically, I believe it was, if there is a system of oppression,
yes,
then point to it and we'll fight it together.
Yes.
I was challenged by, I was working at a summer camp, and I was challenged by members who are of the left. They believe that there are many systems of oppression, but the main one they pointed to was the prison system.
Mm-hmm.
And that mainly involved the 13th Amendment, specifically something about a clause that if...
What is the involuntary servitude?
I'm sorry if I'm not completely educated.
It's totally fine, yeah. The 13th Amendment bans slavery and involuntary servitude.
I know, it's really bad. But they mainly pointed to a Netflix documentary called 13th.
Mm-hmm.
Featuring Van Jones, and I believe, yeah, I know. Even like, I
like Van, but he's a comic.
Nixon campaign advisors and other campaign advisors of previous presidents. So I'd like to know, what do you think about the prison system in terms of how it is a system of oppression?
It is not a system of oppression to put criminals in prison. So my view of the criminal justice system is that if you commit a crime, you should go to jail. And there's a very easy way to avoid jail, and it's called not committing crimes. So there's a lot of talk in the United States about the bias in the criminal justice system. There's only one problem with this idea, which is that the crime reports match up entirely with crime arrests, meaning that the number of crime reports that are received by the cops match up by race with the number of arrests they make. So it's not like you've got an enormous number of white people calling the cops on white people, and then the police just ignore it, and 0 black people calling the cops on black people, and the police just go and pick up every black person they can find. The crime rate reports are entirely consistent. Okay, and the talk about how more blacks than whites are being arrested on the basis of certain crimes. Well, yeah, right. The idea is that it's disproportionate. Well, yes, because there's a disproportionate share of crime that's being committed by black people. I mean, that is not a racial comment. That is a statistical comment. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. It has to do with the fact that there are poverty cultures that exist in certain inner cities in the United States that generate enormous levels of crime, and that single motherhood, which is now at 70% in the black community, is highly linked to crime rates. Again, that's true for white people also. Single motherhood is deeply linked to crime rates in the white community as well. But this idea that cops are just out there trying to randomly shoot black people and arrest black people is just a bunch of crap. And this nonsense where the example that they like to use, their favorite example, just to debunk their favorite one, is the idea that in the United States, an ounce of crack cocaine gets you a longer sentence than an ounce of powder cocaine.
I was about to mention the war on drugs.
Yeah, so let me be clear about my view on the war on drugs. I'm libertarian on drugs. So I'm for decriminalization of marijuana, and so long as drugs are not actually... and so long as drugs are not actively creating so long as drugs are not creating externalities, meaning you take a drug like PCP and then you go murder somebody, then I don't see where it's the government's business whether you drink or do drugs. All that said, drugs deeply, deeply annoy me from a societal and moral point of view. But when it comes to crack cocaine and powder cocaine, the reason that they are different sentences is because there were a bunch of black legislators in the 1980s who were sick of watching crack ravage their communities and pushed for longer sentences for crack cocaine. Crack cocaine is easier to distribute, it is more concentrated in form, and here is the best proof that there is no racial bias. You know it's another substance that gets exactly the same sentence for exactly the same amount. Crystal meth. White people get arrested for crystal meth. And the vast majority of people who are arrested for distribution of crystal meth are white. And that does not seem, that would be a perfect case where you would expect if there was bias in the criminal justice system, ooh, they're white because it's crystal meth, they get less time, they don't.
Thank you.
Great.
Hi, Mr. Shapiro. I'd just like to say it's an honor to be even asking you a question. this past year, me and a few friends with inspiration from you founded a conservative campus group at our university, UTM. And I wanted to say thank you, firstly, for the inspiration, and also, what do you think should be our role on the campus, and what should be our main objectives? Obviously free speech, but after free speech.
I mean, there are a number of things that you can do on campus. First of all, thank you for being the activist on campus. You know, I come and I go and I make speeches, but after I leave, you're the one on the ground who has to do the work. So the first thing that I recommend to everybody is, again, a piece of advice that I got from Andrew Breitbart, and that is, if you have a smartphone, you are now a journalist. Okay, if you have a smartphone and it has a camera on it, it is your job to expose some of the bad things that are going on your campus. So if you see extreme things that professors are saying, particularly at a public campus, then get me the information, email me at bshapiro@dailywire.com, and we'll cover it. We have several writers who are going to Canadian universities right now, actually. We actually cover Canadian universities relatively in depth from time to time at Daily Wire. So you're a journalist now because no one else is going to cover it. You're the only person on campus who's there to see it. And sunlight is the best disinfectant. As far as other things you can do, obviously trying to take over student government would be great. I know that BDS has become a major issue on a lot of campuses and one that I'm passionate about. I think that fighting BDS is worthwhile. And the best way to fight BDS is not to do the sort of typical Israel defense stuff where you talk about how wonderful Israel is and look, we have girls in bikinis and beaches. And no, the best way to fight BDS is to say this is Jew hatred pure and simple. The only reason that you're targeting the state of Israel is because you hate Jews. Because if you really cared about the human rights violations, you'd be talking about targeting Iran or the Palestinians or the Saudis or the Yemenis.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you, Ben. My name is Rahan. I recently was tasked to be a health policy analyst for the Progressive Conservative Party in regards to health policy. I was wondering if you'd be willing to take a health policy question.
Sure.
So I define myself as a classical liberal. I believe in smaller government. I believe in individual freedom and personal responsibility. When I'm researching health issues, I noticed that a single-payer healthcare system is much more efficient than privatized systems. For example, so when I've been researching health policy issues, I've noticed that single-payer systems, such as, for example, in Canada, in countries like the UK, in Sweden, that they actually cost less, they provide greater access. My question is, how could we implement free market principles into a healthcare system? Do we have to go down the route that the US has gone, where we have a system where the administrative costs of the US healthcare system are 346% more than the Canadian healthcare system?
No. I mean, there's an enormous number of regulations in place in the United States that drive those costs up. So to understand the roots of the American healthcare system, you have to understand that health insurance did not used to be linked to employment. So the vast majority of people in the United States get their health insurance through their employer. Their employer actually buys their health insurance for them. That was because the federal government during World War II and a little bit after actually regulated wages. So that meant that employers who wanted to give their employees raises couldn't give them more money, so instead they gave them health insurance. And then the government began incentivizing employers to do this. So what that meant is there's actually a pretty wide gap in the United States between people who are happy with their health insurance, namely people who are employed, and people who are not employed and have to buy in the individual markets. Obamacare tried to kind of create a mandate that was going to supposedly drive healthy people to buy, and that would take care of the sick people. But the problem is that number one, the mandate was not high enough if you're going to do that. And number two, it's violative of basic rights to force people to buy something that they don't want to buy. So the best way to think about healthcare is that there are three things you can look for in any healthcare system. There's universality, there's affordability, and there's quality. Right? You can have two of those three, but not all three. There's no way to have all three. You can't have affordability and universality and quality. So in the United States, the 5-year cancer survival rate is a lot higher than it is in Canada or in Sweden or in Denmark. The vast majority of medical patents still come out of the United States. And that's because of a profit-based system. So how do you get all that and then also get low cost? Well, it's pretty easy, actually, to get low cost, but you're not going to get universality. There's still going to always be this group of people who don't think ahead enough, and this is really the problem with the healthcare system. There's a group of people who don't think ahead enough to actually buy healthcare when they are young and healthy. They wait until they're old, and then they have a pre-existing condition, and they can't get healthcare because insurance companies insure against risk. They don't give you money for a risk that has already materialized. So my basic answer is that if you were to deregulate the healthcare system almost entirely in the United States, give tax credits for the individual provision of health care as opposed to through your employer, and then get rid of the restrictions about not selling insurance across state lines, allow people to sell all types of insurance plans, then just like in every other area of capitalism, you would see an increase in quality and a decrease in price. Because this happens with every other product. Treating healthcare as a right and not a product has actually driven up price and driven down quality, as opposed to treating it as a product.
When we talk about how, for example, you said there are 3 pillars: affordability, accessibility, and quality. One question I had is about collective bargaining. In a single-payer system, for example, drugs, whether it be pharmaceuticals, whether it be healthcare services, they can be collectively bargained. The issue that I'm seeing with systems that don't have that is that what ends up happening is that individuals now buy health insurance from a corporation. Those corporations are now competing with each other. This removes any incentive for collective bargaining. And the fact of the matter is that when individuals are purchasing healthcare services individually, they simply cannot get the same price that other countries were purchasing collectively, such as Canada, and we're seeing a huge problem in the United States.
Yeah, for sure. And this is one of the problems with this is a deeper problem in the United States and in Western civilization generally, is the lack of social institutions outside government. So it used to be that you would get your insurance basically through your church group or through your synagogue group. You'd collectively bargain with the people in your community, and then you would go to, and they still have these co-ops in the United States, and you collectively bargain with the insurance companies. Again, there's 2 things that you're trying to do. One is provide for the sick and elderly, and the second is not to create the moral hazard of not encouraging people who are young to go out and buy. So when you have these government fallback positions, what you actually end up doing is creating a subsidy for the insurance companies that end up driving the prices up, up, up. And then if you're in the private sector, then you're still paying those high prices, and you have to collectively bargain in order to drive them back down. It's really complicated and really heavily regulated, and I fail to see, other than the sort of general argument that you don't want to see sick people uninsured, which is a fine argument, but calls for charity, not necessarily government intervention. Other than that argument, I fail to see how healthcare is not a product. Declaring things a right doesn't make them so. Right? South Africa declares healthcare a right, and no one has healthcare in South Africa because it's a kind of crappy country. So, sorry, there's a whole line of people behind you, but I appreciate it.
Mr. Shapiro, first of all, I'd like to thank you for coming to visit Canada. I could speak for most people when I say you've been an inspiration to us all.
Well, thank you.
My question today relates to what can we as young grassroots conservatives and lovers of freedom can do when our politicians fail to protect us from malevolent legislation that encroaches on our freedom. Specifically, provincially, we've had a lot of legislation passed in the past few years under the Kathleen Wynne Liberal government. Most recently with Bill 89, which gives the state the authority to take children away from parents.
And Bill 89 is horrific. I actually know about that one.
Yeah, if they disagree with a child's so-called gender expression. And a lot of young conservatives are very discontent that our provincial Conservative Party has done very little to stop this legislation. There's a lot of different viewpoints of young conservatives of what should and what must be done to ensure our freedoms are protected. On one side, there's a lot of people saying making a new political party is great, and then you could run candidates based off your values. And on the other side, where people like myself are, is thinking that you need to change the Conservative Party from the inside, whereas...
So I apologize, first and foremost, that I don't know your particular provincial government all that well. So it's hard for me to answer what you should do with your provincial government party when I barely know the geography of your country. I assume that I'm somewhere near the East Coast right now, but I don't know. Okay, so I'm wrong. So... whatever, it was a 5-hour flight from LA. Anyway, so LA is the center of the world. In any case, the sort of, my general perspective on this is that it's easier to take over existing institutions than it is to form new ones. I don't know, if that's true or not. I'd have to learn more about it to give you a straight answer. So I apologize for not having a better answer for you on that one, despite your admiration. Maybe it was unearned, so you can take it back now. It's not a very good answer, so I apologize.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Shapiro. Thank you so much for coming. So it seems clear to me that when people like you and people like Professor Peterson stand in the face of a brigade of lies and insist on telling the truth, it seems clear to me that that takes a great deal of courage. And it's genuinely inspiring. That being said, as a student, and as you know, I'm sure many of the people here are students, the consequences for standing up to those who would strip us of our freedoms can be pretty daunting. You know, we have to worry about applications, grades in some cases, you know, and we had some great, you know, examples in front of us earlier on. But I just wanted to know if you had any general or specific advice.
I do. So number one, there are a lot of people who will kind of give you the roar, fight, you know, routine. My feeling is a little bit different. So when I was at UCLA, we had these things called blue books. Blue books were these anonymous exam books where you could write your student ID number, but they didn't know who you were. They didn't know your name. So what I would do is in class, I would talk as much as I want. I would argue with professors. I would talk with other students. I would protest. I would write for the student paper. And then when it came time to write the exam, I would write exactly what the professor wanted me to write. And I graduated summa cum laude from UCLA. So all I'm saying to all you conservative students is that you have to determine what feels good and what is effective. Okay, so it is not necessarily effective to write a paper for your professor that you know will get you a C just so that you can tell your friends that you really stuck it in the eye of the professor, because the professor just shut you down, right? The professor just lessened your chances of getting into the grad school that you want to go to or getting the grade that you need. Much better to give the professor what the professor wants on the tests, and then make a lot of money, give a lot of money to the university, and then threaten to withdraw all that money unless the discriminatory professor is fired. So there's a risk assessment calculation that goes into all of this, and so all I would say is that there's some professors who are perfectly willing to have a great debate, and they don't care, and they like it, and they enjoy it. When I was at Harvard Law, I had a lot of professors who were like that. And then there are professors who aren't, and you have to assess for yourself whether this is a conversation worth having or an action worth doing that's not going to destroy my future capacity to win the battle. So, I mean, there are certain like, everyone tends to think you fight every battle, you fight every war. Okay, there's a movie coming out called Dunkirk. Okay, you don't. Sometimes it's better to strategically retreat so you can come back in force and take the mainland.
Thank you so much.
Hey, Ben. I just want to thank you again. You have phenomenal speech.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah. So I've been talking with a lot of progressives online who have been attempting to downplay the rape epidemic taking place in Europe, particularly in Sweden. They cite sources such as The Atlantic and the BBC. How does the mindset of an intersectional feminist allow them to carry out that narrative? And what would you say to someone who is attempting to minimize European rape statistics? Okay, so European rape statistics, one of the problems in a lot of Northern European countries is that they don't actually do proper statistics. So their statistics do not, as far as I'm aware, list country of origin when they do the rape statistics. And so it's actually a problem. So you'll see correlation. You'll see like elevated rape rate in a particular area, and then people on the right will say, right, because if you look at the level of immigration in that particular area, it's dramatically changed. There's been a demographic and cultural shift in that area, and then the left will go, right, but you know, that's correlation. It doesn't necessarily mean causation. And so, you know, you can have that argument, but you really need better statistics in order to lock it down. As far as the ideology that allows the left to ally itself with, you know, Islamofascists, I think that what that really is, you have to understand the goal of intersectionality is not just for each independent group to feel good, it's to form a phalanx against Western civilization. So what really matters is the coalition against the oppressor. So we're not on the side of intersectional feminists because we don't believe they're being victimized. Radical Muslims may not be on the side of feminists in terms of what they want to achieve, but they agree that Western society is a victimization society. They feel victimized, feminists feel victimized, therefore they can unite in their victimization, and they're both fighting for the same goal, which is the changing at the root of Western civilization itself. And so if you have to ignore, you know, if you have to side with Stalin to fight Hitler in their view, then they will go ahead and do that. And that means ignoring statistics, and it means ignoring brutality. It means that you'll have Jews who are thrown out of a gay pride parade in Chicago, but you'll have Justin Trudeau wearing Eid Mubarak socks to a gay pride parade in Canada, right? Even though there's not a single Muslim country on planet Earth that legally allows gay pride parades. So, you know, none of this makes any sense except under the guise of you have a coalition that's designed to attack Western civilization, and people are willing to make strange bedfellows to make that happen. All right, great. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ben, thanks for coming out. You're getting another question about the lighthearted and peaceful subject of Islam. I'm an atheist and a secular humanist, and that acknowledges the Judeo-Christian history of the Western civilization.
So we're on the same side, great.
Yep, exactly. a quick example, this recent string of attacks in London and Manchester. What is Europe doing wrong, and what is the UK specifically doing wrong, and how can we fix this?
So, I mean, multiculturalism is a giant fail. 10 years ago, people, even on the left in Europe, were acknowledging this. Even a couple of years ago, Angela Merkel was making noises about acknowledging that multiculturalism was a huge fail. Assimilation is critical. If you want Western civilization to survive and thrive, people have to assimilate to Western civilization's basic precepts and principles. Unfortunately, the Europeans have been so reticent about advancing those principles that they've basically said, come in here, live here, form your own enclaves, and at no point are we going to, it would be racist and imperialistic for us to require you to assimilate in any significant way. And this is something that the left has been pushing for a long time, this whole cultural relativist, moral relativist nonsense where every culture is equal and the same, and we can never say that one culture is worse than another in any real way. And so then they're surprised because they think, okay, well, they'll come here because the left is materialist at root, because the left is Marxist at root, and they believe that all happiness can basically be summed up in your bottom line. This is why they think that poor people are inherently unhappy and rich people are inherently happy, so we have to somehow shift that balance. They look at radical, like, I think, honestly, people who understand Judeo-Christian civilization understand radical Islam better than the left does. The left looks at radical Islam and they say, okay, why are all these people coming to rich countries, living great lifestyles? They were living in a crap hole before, and now they're living in a wonderful place where they have all this free stuff and TV and all this great stuff. Why aren't they integrating into our society? What did we do wrong? And the answer is you didn't tell them to integrate into your society. The right understands that people are not generally motivated by materialism. They are motivated by principle. People are motivated by what they think is going to make their life fulfilling. And so if you understand that materialism is not a cause, materialism is nice and all, and it's great to have cool things, but that's not a cause, right? Capitalism is not merely good because it provides a lot for a lot of people. Capitalism is good because it acknowledges the fundamental human rights at the center of free exchange. Right? Once you understand that, that's something you can fight for. But it's very difficult to fight for, great, you have a microwave. And when you tell, a group of people who come from a foreign country and have a culture that doesn't value any of the things you value, well, yeah, but you have a microwave now. Well, yeah, so the hell what? The microwave doesn't provide me meaning in my life. So, ending the multicultural mindset, requiring assimilation, and taking active steps toward assimilation, as well as cutting off funds from the Saudi royal government for mosques, for example, which the Saudi government promotes Wahhabism. Yeah, these are steps that would be worthwhile.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, Ben. My name's Alan. I just graduated high school, and I'm going to university next year. It's a very liberal university. I'm not happy about it, but you got to do what you got to do. I'm going into a similar program as you. Actually, tomorrow I'm going to Israel. I'm going to represent Maccabi Canada. First match is against the USA, so we'll see what I can do. So I have two quick questions. Both of them are pertaining to Israel. The first one is recently the Israeli government decided to scrap the whole thing about the Western Wall being integrated between men and women. And I still have many friends on the left. I used to be on the left, well, still.
Yes.
So I did meet Rabbi Rick Jacobs twice. I was, let's say, politically challenged back then. So I didn't really know what to say to him or how to talk to him or how to be objective when speaking to him. But what I saw recently from what he wrote was that he canceled his meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I think that's pretty disgusting because you want to know what the other person's thinking before you just form your opinion. So I wanted to know what your opinion was on that issue.
So, I mean, when it comes to a combined area for prayer at the Western Wall, I mean, as an Orthodox Jew, I do not have an enormous problem with a combined area for prayer at the Western Wall, simply because the mechitza is actually a relatively new invention in halacha. And I don't want to get into the intricacies of Jewish law here. But the big problem that I have with the people who are complaining about it is that the vast majority of people who are whining about it are people who 5 minutes ago were saying that Israel should turn over the Western Wall to the Palestinians and no Jew should be allowed to visit it. So you've got this whole group of Reform Jews who go out there and they say, well, the Palestinians are totally justified. East Jerusalem should be handed right back to the Arabs, and everything will be hunky-dory. And then they turn around and say, you know who the real fascists are? Those people who allow women to visit the Western Wall and men to visit the Western Wall, but not visit it together in the same place at the same time. Now, I've been to the Kotel. I've been to the Western Wall. First of all, it's not that big a deal. If you can't handle being away from your significant other or your sister or your mother for 5 minutes while you literally walk 15 feet to the wall and then walk away, then get over yourself a little bit. But beyond that, you know, if you want a separate prayer space, I guess that's fine with me. I really don't care. But I do object to this. It's the nitpicking with regard to Israel, while at the same time, not to quote a testament that, you know, Jews are not into, but there is a rather large moat in the eye of the people who are complaining about this. And they don't get to whine about the constituency of the Western Wall at the same time that they are saying that a fascist terrorist government ought to take it over, which will immediately ban all Jews.
Yeah, exactly. So my second question is pertaining to kibbutzim. What you know that their basic system is one based on like a microcosm of socialism.
Yes.
So I wanted to know what you thought about that pertaining to Bernie Sanders' like insane loony bin socialism.
Right. So Bernie Sanders is a nutcase, and Bernie Sanders, like this is something people say about the New Testament also, because in the New Testament, I've got my Christian hat on tonight. I mean, the New Testament has a section where it talks about Jesus sharing in common with his disciples, and so people like to quote the New Testament to the idea that Jesus was a socialist. Okay, as somebody who, first of all, the New Testament also says, "He who does not work, he shall not eat," right? So there's that. But aside from that, the fact is that the kibbutz model failed. They tried it, and then they tried to expand it out, and it failed. And the reason it failed is for the same reason that socialism always failed. You can't pay a doctor the same as a janitor and expect things to go well. It'll work. Socialism works in tiny communities. You know how you know? Because you all have families, and they're basically socialist. Right? You have a common pool of wealth, and everybody draws from it. Right? My wife and I have a joint bank account. Ooh, we're socialists. Right? But the difference is, I like my wife. I don't know any of you people. So this idea that you can extend out what is essentially a familial system across an entire broad society and then force people to join in, and we can all be one family, even if the guy who's taking from the pot's a total schmuck who won't do a day of work, it's not going to succeed. I am so irritated with the support for Bernie Sanders, I cannot even tell you. Every time that loon bag gets up there and he says, "Life is not fair, give me money," I just want to die. It's so awful.
So just to quickly wrap up, I am a premium annual subscriber to the Daily.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Also, my mom's an Argentinian immigrant, so she wants you to talk a little bit slower because English is not her first language. So
yeah, I've been asked this about a bajillion times, and unfortunately, the brain moves too fast. I can't.
Also, a lot of people say don't meet your heroes. I think they're full of crap. I was wondering if I could shake your hand as well.
Sure. Come on up.
Thank you.
Hi, Ben.
Howdy.
He stole my line. Anyway. I just wanted to thank you for coming here and doing what you're doing. I'm a political refugee from Iran, and when I got here, the first thing I did was go to York University, and I was there for 3 months, and I quit, and I was like, okay, the West had a good run. But then I saw you guys and other people like you on YouTube, and I was like, okay. So there's still a chance. My question was about prayer in public for Muslims. Mm-hmm. Because as an Islamic philosophy, it's designed for, especially in infidel lands, as they call it, it's designed to create fear in the heart of infidel from the unity of Muslims, and basically make them fear Muslims and accept them as a force to be reckoned with in their land. Mm-hmm. So is there a legal argument to be made to basically fight against or try to ban public prayer?
I don't think so, and the reason I don't think so is because I would be a hypocrite to say otherwise. I'm an Orthodox Jew. I pray in public when I have to. I prayed at the airport on my way here. And I think that, you know, how you pray is your business. You doing violence or holding views that are antithetical to the West is a different story. And I can't impute to individuals
I mean mass prayers.
Oh, you mean like hundreds of people?
In the street, yeah.
Well, first of all, okay, so yes, there.
I meant mass prayers, I'm sorry. That's the philosophy of mass prayer.
Understood. Okay, got it. So when it comes to mass prayer, I have a general rule, which is I hate people shutting down the streets because I have equal access to the streets. I don't understand why you should have to do it in the streets. I mean, like, you get a permit like everybody else. Okay. You know, if you want to get a permit to pray, go ahead and get a permit to pray. and then I don't have a problem with it. But the idea of anybody shutting down public thoroughfares, I think, is silly. By the way, I feel exactly the same way about bicycle races. Like, go rent a stadium, gang. I mean, we have places to be. Like, I understand you're going around on your stupid bike, but I have a car. The road was built for my car, not for your dumb bike.
And when somebody, I'm sorry, I have another question. When somebody like Linda Sarsour is right now the face of feminism in America, and people like, I know, guys, we're all on Bernie Sanders and women organizations and Amnesty International, all of them support this person. She is not a fringe person anymore. What can we do against a person that is accepted by the mainstream of one political party?
Yeah, I mean, the left has become extraordinarily radical. I mean, the only thing you can do is just expose her for who she is. I mean, this is a lady, for people who don't know, I mean, from the booing, you all know who Linda Sarsour is, but Linda Sarsour is a person who said that Ayaan Hirsi Ali should basically have her vagina taken away from her because she opposes Islam.
Of Sharia law.
Yeah, she's supportive of Sharia law, and not like the left likes to say that when you say that you're not supportive of Sharia law, you mean that you care about like Islamic finance. No, Linda Sarsour is like in favor of actual criminal Sharia law in Muslim countries. Okay, that involves execution of infidels, execution of, well, I should say, heretics, people who were Islamic and who were Muslim and then converted away. So yeah, I mean, again, this is again a case of strange bedfellows. She's been made relatively toxic in the United States, but we need to make her more toxic. And people are afraid to do it because she wears a hijab. So everybody goes, ooh, well, we're scared. You're going to call me Islamophobic. I would say the same thing about Linda Sarsour that I'd say about Noam Chomsky, since they apparently hold the same views.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro, I'm deeply grateful for your presence tonight. I'd like to start this off by saying that I watch the Thug Life videos all the time.
You know what's hilarious about it? I don't even know the guy. The guy just randomly made that stuff, and then I let him like use my image for his marketing because I think that it's hilarious. And it wouldn't work unless I were a giant nerd. So yeah, it's really funny stuff.
That being said, I do disagree with you in one area, and that is capital punishment. So I believe that it's dangerous for the government to have the power to execute citizens, mainly for the reason that people can be found innocent later on when there was no evidence at the time to suggest that they were. Also, in that I believe that we should, in a way, move away from punitive criminal justice and perhaps move towards not necessarily fully rehabilitation, but looking at why people commit crime as opposed to just locking them up or killing them in certain cases.
Okay, so I'll start with the second question first, and then we can get to capital punishment. So when it comes to rehabilitative measures attempted on a general level have generally been a failure. The vast majority of criminals become recidivists when you let them out. So the giant crime drop that the United States saw between 1993 and 2010 until it started to rise again, that was almost solely due to greater police presence, better community policing, increase in lockup. It was so funny, like the New York Times ran a headline, crime rate goes down despite higher incarceration. You're like, wait, despite? Like, it turns out when you put criminals in jail, they're not out committing crime. So, I agree that there are things that we can do to prevent crime before crime happens, but once somebody has committed a crime, it's going to be rare, not impossible. I mean, there's probably 20 to 30% of people who commit a crime and then get out and do fine. But the recidivism rate is incredibly high, particularly for violent crime and for property crime as well. So, yes, locking people up does help. Again, best solution, create cultures that prevent people being locked up. As far as capital punishment, so I agree with the notion that the system of capital punishment is deeply flawed. But the logic of the argument that we can't execute people because they might be innocent is an argument that in law school they would say proves too much, because the same is true about jailing people. You can make the exact same argument. How could you deprive somebody of 10 years of their freedom when they could be innocent? Why not just let everybody go? And the answer is that if you have a criminal justice system, you have to trust that the criminal justice system, if it is fair, is going to come up with the correct result. That is not always the case, obviously. And I guess the case would be, well, it's not irreconcilable if they're in jail for 40 years and then you let them out, then you've at least salvaged something. That seems to me a relatively weak case, particularly when you're talking about the cases that generally get the death penalty, right? The cases that generally get the death penalty are people raping and murdering small children. You know, and do I think those people deserve to die? Yes, I think those people deserve to die. If I could kill them, bring them back to life, and kill them again, I would. So, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro, I'm deeply grateful for your presence tonight. I'd like to start this off by saying that I watch the Thug Life videos all the time. I don't necessarily agree with that, but thank you. I respect your opinion.
Sure.
Hey Ben, nice to finally see you in person.
Thanks.
First question is, I've been watching your shows ever since you've destroyed Piers Morgan that time, and I noticed that you mentioned a couple of times that you believe that Obama, he didn't do things on purpose, and you think that he was a little bit foolish, or I think you've mentioned it a couple of times. I just want.
No, I think Trump doesn't do things on purpose. I think Obama.
Okay, well, Trump's obvious. I mean,
right, exactly. I think Obama largely did things on purpose.
I mean, in regards. Oh yeah. Okay, fine. So I guess that question. Sorry, the garbage. The next question is, I recently got married. I'm working 2 jobs. And work
well, congratulations
on
marriage.
A lot of times, work is on my mind when I get home. Yeah, so a lot of the time work is on my mind when I get home from work. I was just wondering how you keep it separate. This is more of like a personal question, not so political.
Yeah, how you keep work and
like,
home
I know you're
separate.
A busy guy and everything.
I mean, I'm lucky. I have, I don't tend to brag about my life too much. My marriage is like a 10 out of 10. I have a fantastic marriage. My wife is a spectacular woman. She's an incredible person. She is... She is beautiful and she is smart and all of the things that will get me good cooking when I get home. In any case, we've been married for almost 10 years. We have 2 kids under the age of 4. And that is enough to fill my mind, and I need it. So what I would recommend is that home, if home is not your sort of cocoon to get away from work, then you're doing it wrong. You need to put down the computer, you need to put down the electronic devices, you need to spend time with each other. And that's something that I've struggled with, because we all struggle with it. You know, you want to watch TV, but then you realize you spent an hour watching Netflix and you spent 5 minutes talking to your wife.
Not even in regards to TV, like, if you want to be successful for later on, like, you got to work your ass off. I mean,
Wait, for sure. You definitely have to work. But, I mean, do you have kids yet or no?
No.
No, so you don't have kids yet. So first of all, if you think that having a wife is time-consuming, wait until you have small children. But, you know, I think that a lot of what I've learned just in terms of working is that working smarter beats working harder, and that means structuring your day in a very specific way. So I'd have to sit down with you and actually discuss with you, like, what you do for what are your 2 jobs.
I'm happy to do that.
What was that?
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you email me, and I'm happy to email you back on that, because I do like helping people out with life plans. My big thing in life when I talk to people, because I get a lot of advice questions, is that you have to make a plan for yourself. Where do I want to be in 5 years, and how am I going to achieve that? The people who tend to flail and flounder in life are the people, or founder in life, are the people who don't have a plan. They sort of take it day to day. Figure out how you're going to get from A to B, and then come up with a step-by-step guide and deliverables that you can hit along the way in order to do that. And then you can structure your life. So, you know, the fact is that I did used to work a lot more 10 years ago than I do now, just in terms of sheer number of hours. I still work a ton of hours, but now I have like 4 hours during the day where I can spend it with my wife and my kids. You know, between like 5 and 9 basically is my wife and kids, and then the rest of the day is work. So it used to be, you know, when I was younger and didn't have kids, it would be more like, you know, 5 in the morning to 9, no break, you know, half an hour break. So, but again, I'd have to talk to you about your specific job. But have a plan, and then work toward a plan that allows you to live your life. And make sure that you carve out time for actual relaxation. You have to carve it out. You have to plan that. Okay, you build your time around the relaxation, not around the work. What people tend to do is say, okay, here's my work time, and then everything else is just going to be fun time. What that does is 2 things. 1, it means that you don't work as hard because you're trying to structure your playtime. And 2, it means that you are not going to actually be able to find your playtime because there are going to be times when you got caught up short on work. So you actually have to structure your time. You have to say, okay, between 6 and 8, the phone goes off, the computer goes off, I'm spending time with my wife now. The rest of the time, we can turn it back on.
Got it. Can I come shake your hand as well? Also?
Sure. You know, let's do it. I like that selfie. It's the first time I've ever been taller than anyone.
Thank you very much, Ben. For students, you can still go to O'Grady's. We rented the bar or something, so you can head over there.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.